Hey everyone, what's up? I actually got a really good response on my first Flutter video and I thought about making more of these. So I'm Asanayaz and I'm going to teach you about flutter-stripe-payments, and this is something that has been really painful for me when I was implementing it, and I thought about making the lives easier for everyone out there. So this is going to be split into multiple videos, and what I'm going to do in this video is that we are going to lay out the basic UI for what we are going to do. So we are going to have two list items. One will say that we have to use the payments with a new card, and the other would use existing cards within the application. So let's lay down what we have to do right now. So first of all, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create some pages. So we have this pages folder inside the lib folder, and here I'm going to create the home page, and I'm also going to create the existing cards page. So I will call it existing cards dot dot. Now that we have these two, we also have to create some routes. But before that, let's just lay down basic structure for this UI. So what we can do here is that we can first import material, and then we can create a stateful widget. We can call it home page. And here in the child, we can just simply have a simple text for now. So we can call it home page. Similarly, for the existing cards, we are going to use the material import, and then I'm going to create stateful widget, and then we are going to call it existing cards page. Now for both of these views, we actually have to have some scaffolding there. So what we can do is that we can actually create a scaffold here. Let's create a scaffold, and inside we can have an app bar, and this is going to be an app bar, and inside we will have a title, and then this is going to be a text widget, and we can say choose existing card. Now beneath we will have a body, and this is going to be a container, and inside we can just have a child, and we can say text. We can call it existing cards page, for instance, and I'm actually going to wrap this inside a padding element, or we can actually give a padding right here. So we can say padding edge all, and then we can give it a 20, and then here I can paste it. Now I'm going to copy this one, and we are going to use the same for the home page as well. So let me just copy it, and in the home page we can go back, and here we can paste this as well. And for the title we can just say home page for now. Now that we have set these, we can start with the routing. So instead of this home route or this home element with this home page set, which is using this one, I'm going to be using the home page that I've created. So I'm going to remove this one, and then instead of this, what we can do is that we can use routes, and in routes we can give it home, and this is going to be using context and home page. And similarly, we are going to be using existing cards. We'll use context, and then we are going to use the existing cards page. Now that we have set these, just import these one by one, and then what we also need to provide is the initial route. So the initial route is going to be home, and now we are actually set up with everything. So I'm going to restart my application, and I'm going to see if this actually works. Awesome. So now you can see that we have this home page, but it says choose existing card because I actually have left this. Typical copy mistake. So I'm gonna just fix this, refresh this, and now we can talk about those list options that I mentioned earlier. So in order to make those list options, what I can do is that instead of this homepage text, I can create a list view dot separated, and this actually requires a couple of things. So I'm gonna go through that one by one. So it requires an item builder, it requires a separator builder, and also it requires the item count. Since we are only going to have two elements, I'm going to give this an item count of 2, and then here I'm going to talk about the item builder. So we'll have context and we'll have index. And from here, I'm gonna return the element that we are going to create. But before that, let's talk about the separator builder. So this also requires context and index, and we can basically return a divider from this one. And what we can have here is that we can provide this a color, and then we can basically use the themes color. So in order to use that, since I'm going to be using that multiple times in this body, I can basically create theme data, and theme data would be theme, and then I can use theme dot of context, and here I can use the primary color. Or in fact, since this is theme data, I'm just gonna leave it here. And actually this is not gonna work because this is supposed to be inside here. So now that we have this theme here, we can basically say theme dot primary color. The next step is to use the item builder to create the items. So in order to create this list, I'm gonna have two things here. One would be the text and one would be the icon. So I can first create the icon and name it icon, and then here we can use string text, and then what we can basically do, and instead of string we can actually use this text element directly. Let's use a switch here, and we will basically switch on the index. So if we have the first element, which is going to be the case 0, what we will do is that we'll simply say icon equals icon, and here we can simply say icons dot add, and we're going to use the add circle icon, and then we will use the color, and here we're going to use the theme again. So we'll say primary color, and now that we have set this, we can say text equals, and we will use text, and here we can say pay via new card, and we can just break it here. And then for case 1 we can say icon, and I'm going to be copying this, and we will basically use the icon named credit card, and we can call it pay via existing card. Now that we have set these variables, I'm going to use break here as well in case we decide to add more list items later on. And then finally I'm going to be actually returning an ink well. So let me just scroll up. So I'm going to return an ink well, and here we would have the child list tile, and inside we will be using the values that we have created so far. So we can simply say title is going to be the text element that we have created, and the leading icon would be the icon that we just created. And on tap we will basically provide a function that will work based on what element was pressed. So we'll basically create a function called onItemPress, and we will provide the context and the index to that function. Now let's create this function, and we'll then talk about what's happening. So I will go here, and then I'll just create this onItemPress. We will have a build context here, and then we will have the index, which is going to be an integer. Now that we have this, we can simply call this function and maybe print out something. Let's say we could say index, and then index.toString. And now that we have these, I'm just going to save this, and we are going to see how this looks so far. Cool. So you can see that now we have this really nice list with the icon as well as the title, and this is good. The next step is to make sure that we are firing the right functionality on these tabs. So what we can do here is that we can also put a switch here, and then we'll basically go case by case. So we can say if the case is 0, then we need to do something special. So here we will pay via new card, we'll break, and if the case is 1, then we just need to do navigator dot push named, and here we are going to provide the route name. This is going to be existing cards, and we'll break this here as well. Now that we have set this, let's refresh. Alright, so if I click here, you can see that now we go to the existing card page, and this is fine. This is what we actually wanted to do. Now the next step for this video is to basically have some existing cards within the application, and this might be the scenario in your actual application that you have the payment methods already within your app and you want to use one of the cards for the Stripe payments. So we have got a really nice widget which is called credit card that we can use to visualize those cards here, and then we will basically use them in the later videos for the Stripe payments. So let's see what those actually are. And this is the package that we are going to be using. If I scroll down, you can see that this has this really nice view with the provider of the card and also the details that you usually show on the card. And we can basically install this by using Flutter credit card and adding this to our dependencies. Once we are done, we can use a couple of widgets from this one. For instance, we have this credit card widget, which requires a couple of things like card number, expiry date, cardholder name, CVV code, and also a boolean, which basically turns this back and forward based on your current logic. So we are actually going to use this card widget to display a couple of cards that we will use in the later videos. So let's go to the code and add this as a dependency. So I'm going to go to my pub spec YAML, and here after Flutter, I'm going to add this and save this, and VS Code will automatically install the dependencies for me. The next step is to create those credit cards. So I'm going to go to my existing cards page, and here in this state, first of all, I'm going to create some cards, and these are actually cards from the Stripe payment test page. So you can go there and you can find some of the test cards which Stripe will accept when you are testing and working with the test data. So I'm going to use this list to basically create a list view using these cards. So now that we have that, let's remove this child from here, and then we can use the list view builder, and then we are going to use these cards basically. So first of all, the items count would be cards.length since we have a list, and then from here I'm going to remove this, and from this build context, now we are going to return the credit card widget. So let's go and copy the code for that. So I'm going to scroll down here, and then I'm just going to shamelessly copy this, and then we are going to paste it here. So what we want to do is that we have to return a credit card, but we also want to be able to kind of tap on that card and do some function. So for that, I'm going to use the inkwell here, and then as a child, I'm going to paste this credit card widget here. So let's just use this, and here I'm just gonna be using the false value here for the show back view. And what we can do here is that we can import the package. So let's do that. So we can import the credit card widget package, and now we have to use the values from the card itself. So what we can do is that we can say var card equals cards, and then we can simply say index. Now that we have got this, we can simply say card dot, and then we can use brackets to get the particular values. Sorry, this dot should not be here. Now I'm gonna just copy paste this a couple of times, and then we are going to just replace the keys, cardholder name and CVV code. Now that we have this in place, let's refresh and see if this actually works. Alright, so I'm gonna go to pay via existing, and you can see that we have these cards now. You can see that the numbers are there, the expiry is there, and also the names of the cards are as we have in the list. Now we are also able to tap on these, and on tap we can actually call some function that we can use later on. So for instance, what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to create a function here, and we can say pay via existing card, and here I'm going to provide two things. I'm going to provide the build context, and also I'm going to provide the card. So there's a reason why I'm not actually creating a type for this list of card or for this card, because essentially in the end we will use the type from the Stripe payment SDK and not this credit card. So I'm just keeping it like this for now. So on the inkwell we can use on tap, and then we are going to use a function, and here we can say pay via existing card, and here we can provide the context as well as the card. So when we will have this working, what we can do for now is that just do a navigator dot pop, and that's all. So let's just save this and try this out now. Cool, so you can see that if I go to pay via existing card, we get these nice cards, and if I click back, you can see that it goes back to the previous page, and we have the UI kind of finalized here. The next thing that we want to do in this video is also to create a service that will handle the Stripe payments, and just to make sure that we are kind of using the good UI UX here, so we can show the message to the user if everything is going fine. So for that, what I'm going to do is that we have this services folder, and then I'm going to create a file here named payment service dot. Now I actually want this file to have a service or a class which is going to be a singleton. So I'm going to just use the static methods and static properties for that. So essentially, first what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a class for Stripe transaction response, and this is going to be the response that we will send back to the calling function, which will provide it if the transaction was successful or not. So this is going to have a couple of things, including a message, and it will also have a bool success, and also we will basically initialize this with these two values. So we can simply call this and say this dot message, this dot success. So now that we have set these, what we can do now is create the Stripe payment service. So we can call it Stripe service, and then we will have some static properties here. So from Stripe, we actually need a couple of things, which include the API base URL. So we have a string, we can call it API base, and then here we will have HTTPS, and then we are going to use stripe.com/v1. So the way it will work is that we will have an HTTP call, as well as we are going to use the SDK to do things behind the scenes itself. But you're going to see that in the later videos, so I'm just going to create some things here. So we will also need a secret for this, since we are doing an HTTP call here, and then we will have some functions here. So I'm just going to create the skeleton of that. So first of all, we will need an init function, and that will basically do some initiation logic with providing the publishable key and stuff like that we don't care right now. So we have this working here. Now we create the functions that we will be calling. So the first function that we need is gonna be pay via existing card, and here we will basically pass a couple of things. So first of all, we will provide the amount, then we will also provide the currency, and then we will also provide a card that we can use. And then we also have another function, and we will call it pay with new card, and this will also require the amount and the currency, but we don't need a card for this, since this is gonna request for a new card. So for now, we can actually return this Stripe transaction response. So I'm gonna just paste this, and let's do it for this one as well. And then we can simply return a new transaction response, and we can have the message here, transaction successful, and the success will be set to true. And I'm gonna do the same for the other function as well. So let's do it. And now that we have this in place, what we can do is that we can go to the home page, for instance, and we can basically show some kind of messages out of this. So what we can do here is that we can simply say var response equals, and then we will basically say Stripe service, and I'm going to import this, and then we can say pay via new card, and here we are going to provide the amount, and this is going to be, let's say, 150, and the currency is going to be US dollars. And if the response dot success is true, then we are going to basically show a snack bar here. So we can simply say scaffold dot of context, and then we will say show snack bar, and we can basically provide a snack bar inside, and inside we will have the content, and the content will be a text, and this will basically show the response dot message, and then we have the duration. So for duration we can use a new duration, and here we are going to use milliseconds, and let's say for 1200 milliseconds. Now that we have set this, let's refresh and see if this actually works. So now if I press this button, you can see that we get this transaction successful toaster, and this is nice. Now we have to do the same thing for the other one as well. So I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to go to existing cards, and here if we are paying by existing card, we can simply just, in fact, let's just do this, and then what we can do is we are going to use the Stripe service, but we are going to use pay with or pay via existing card. Now this basically requires another parameter, which is going to be the card. So we are going to provide the card as it is, and finally after this is hidden, we are going to do the navigator.pop. So we can actually chain this with a then after closed. So we can use then, and then here we can basically do a navigator.pop. Now that we have this, let's refresh and see if this works. So now I'm going to go to the existing cards page, and now if I press this, you can see we get the snack bar, and then after it is closed, it goes back. Awesome. So now we have got this really nice UX, and we are going to build on top of this. So that's it for this video, guys. And in the next video, we will basically get started with the Stripe payments in actual. So see you in the next video. Thank you.